think it's time to refill. I should probably not drink too much. It's a bit dangerous. But I think it's time for... It's part two. It's part two. It's part two. It's part two. Okay. All right, guys. Thanks for joining us again today. Now is on to part 2 of our Reddit Wind Down series, or RWD for short. Now we are going to move on to teaching English as a second language, or sometimes it's called ESL. There's also English language learning. There's a lot of acronyms for this. Teaching as a second language, though, is something that Arnell and I can relate to, because for us, it was quite an interesting experience, and it brought on a lot of fun times, difficult times.
That's for sure. Either through time with students or even with the resources available, some things just don't pan out.
So to pan out, it comes from the gold rush age. So if you've ever heard of that, gold, it can be found in river sediments. So people used to have these pans, and they used to dig through the sand and shake it out to find the gold pieces. So now we use that phrase as a part to mean to conclude or to end up with. So that's what to pan out means. All right, let's not get distracted. Let's go ahead and dive into the subject with the Reddit thread, teaching ESL. So this is from a teacher seeking advice for the first time. So this is coming from Extension Listen 3155. They say, advice for a first-time ESL teacher. Hi there. If anyone can make recommendations or offer advice, I would greatly appreciate any insight. Any insight, period. I'm teaching on an ESL reading course for adults. The population mostly speaks English, and this is one of the first ESL classes they're taking. I should preface this by saying this class is specifically for women, most of whom are below the poverty line. I want to do everything in my power to make this class impactful for them and have them leave with something that will make their lives easier. To those much wiser than me, please share your knowledge. Well, right off the bat, it's just commendable that whoever this is, they're going out of the way to make sure they're getting advice and already trying to make waves and moves to make sure this class is impactful.
That already shows that she's doing something right off the bat. Yeah.
Which is very commendable, honestly. It's, good on you.
As teachers ourselves, we know that starting out as an ESL or English as a second language teacher can be exciting yet challenging. So we put together a couple of tips for this person who wrote their post, and for you, those of you out there who do want to be an ESL teacher. So the first thing you should probably do is know your students.
Yes.
So this person that wrote the post obviously knows their students already. They understand their backgrounds, language levels, and learning goals. So this will help you tailor the lessons to their specific needs.
Yes, it's just like writing a paper. You need to know who your audience is. And so for this person, they already know who their audience is, and already starting out from that, that's like step 1.
Yeah, she's already on the ball already. So the second thing, you should plan thoroughly.
Yes.
So being prepared with detailed lesson plans with clear objectives, which includes different activities that cater to different learning styles. So we were actually talking about different learning styles, visual learners,
auditory learners.
Yeah. Is there anything else? What other ones are there? Because those are the 2 main ones that we hear about a lot, but there's a whole bunch of different ones that I can't remember off the top of my head now.
Sometimes when you're in a classroom setting, you'll have students of varying levels. Just because they hit the mark for a certain English level or language level does not mean they are all within that level for speaking, writing, listening, and I'm forgetting something else, reading. You as a teacher, you really gotta plan for anything and everything that could possibly happen, and that just might be coming up with worksheets with leveled lessons. Also, maybe perhaps making sure you are defining everything that's in the lesson. So something for us who are native English speakers don't think about as necessary, but things that we might need to explain.
Exactly. Also, you should be very patient and encouraging. So, learning a language can be really difficult. In our past episode that we just did, we were
Hmm.
actually talking about how easily it is for someone to be discouraged while speaking English. So, it's very
Yes.
imperative for you to be mindful of that when you're teaching English. So, as someone who is teaching maybe someone on the street, they may not be as mindful and may be more blunt when speaking
Mhm.
to these people that want to practice their English with them. But as a teacher, you can't necessarily always do that because you want to be fostering their growth.
It can be embarrassing for the student too, for especially in a classroom setting,
Yeah.
to call them out on something that they said or maybe have done wrong or said slightly different. I would just say, okay, like, let's take a pause real quick. Let's double check that we know this word and what it means. Can someone help me pronounce it? Or can we use it in another sentence? Things like that without calling out the student, but making sure you are covering that base so then they understand the word and how to say it better.
Yeah, but it also goes to back to the learning styles because certain cultures may call for different things. So from my experience, I know when I was teaching online for Chinese students, they were very they really wanted their teacher to call out every single wrong
Ah,
answer. So I had to be way more blunt than I may have usually been with other
hmm,
students because
hmm.
that's their culture and that's what they were looking for from their teaching like their English learning experience.
True, true.
Yeah.
That I can relate to. And it might not just be coming from the students, it could be coming from other influences.
Yeah, like the parents or depending on what age group you're teaching,
Mm,
they may want different things. So
true.
if you're teaching a 5-year-old, you will have to
Lean towards non-traditional routes. Like you really want to focus more on images because
yeah.
younger students might relate more on to images than sentences up on the screen. So we have to constantly think about how can we best approach a certain age group, a certain cultural group. We have to always be considering these type of aspects. And if you don't know, ask it or research or look it up. Make sure you're
Yeah.
doing the homework for yourself as a teacher.
Yeah, and that just goes into the fourth one, which is using visual aids. So
Mm-hmm.
incorporating pictures, flashcards, videos, something like this you could be playing in your classroom to
Mm-hmm.
show how native speakers are interacting with each other.
Yes, I've used that a few times to talk about the different accents that my students may come across, especially around the world, because we
Yeah.
might have countries that speak English, but we might all speak English differently. Even in
Yeah.
my country, we all speak English differently depending on where we're from.
Yeah, there are regional accents also
Hmm.
within a certain country. So the same way that someone in Canada may speak in Vancouver is not the same way that I would speak as someone from Toronto.
Yes. Moving on, so we can number 5, incorporate all skills. So you as a teacher, you need to understand that you're more than just teaching how to speak. You have to teach valuable skills like listening, speaking, reading, writing, and you want to create these activities that flow into each other, not stand still or be separated, unless that's your purpose. Always think about your purpose and what you're trying to get across, and also at the same time, you need to think about how can you encourage your students to hit these 5 components.
And you also have to remember you're
Our
also
core
representing
components.
you're also representing your culture.
Yes.
So you may be the first person that they've come in contact with that don't look like them.
Hmm.
So you also have to take that into account.
Oh, yes, that's true.
Yeah.
Number 6, create a positive environment. So in your classroom, you want to have that supportive, positive classroom where students are going to feel comfortable to take risks and make mistakes, because that is really where the language learning comes in. If you're just playing it safe all the time and not encouraging yourself, especially as a learner, for our learners out there, it's okay, we kind of cover this in part 1, but it's okay to make mistakes. And you as a teacher, you need to be prepared for when these mistakes occur and how can you best approach this. You want your classroom to be comfortable. So when a student makes a mistake, we encourage each other, we love each other, and we support each other. And that really falls on the teacher who's in that room, or in this case, maybe even online presence, to be that positive force.
Yeah.
Number 7, use interactive activities. So, and this one is so important. So just hearing and listening and looking, that's one part of listening, but even we as teachers can know it can get boring.
Yes, very quickly.
You gotta mix it up. Now, are you gonna do all the time interactive lessons? That's sometimes really difficult, especially when you're teaching writing skills. That's not a really interactive lesson you can get into, and if you do it could take a lot of time. But there are ways that you can incorporate it without making it the whole lesson about this.
Yeah, it's definitely all about balance.
Balance is very important, and you want to make sure your students are interacting and getting into the lesson, because that's really where the learning takes place. You can do these type of things like with games, role playing, group work,
even experiments.
Right. I used to use incentives with like the Kahoot games. My students used to love Kahoot games. You never heard of it? It's that online platform where you can make games and they respond with their cell phones or their laptops to answer the question. Whoever answers the question fast and quick enough gets like the number 1 point. So my students used to be
so fun.
I used to like leave it on Fridays and said if their behavior, their work, and all this other stuff. Mind you, I was not teaching adults. I was teaching middle schoolers. So I said, if their behavior, their attitudes, and all this other stuff, like their homework and all this stuff is really great throughout the week, on Fridays, it's game day. And that was their big push. And that's where they got really into this.
And you definitely have to switch things up, especially if you're teaching adults. They may not engage with the same things that the younger crowd will be engaging with, but we're adults too. We like games too.
Yeah, give me a game. I'm on it.
Yeah.
I thrive on competition.
Exactly. Just age appropriate competition.
Age appropriate competition. Last one is simplify your language. So something that we've noticed about ourselves when we speak, there are times where I slow down and I really enunciate words, which I might not even do when I speak English with my parents.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, I have noticed I say water. I pronounce the T in water. Normally, in regular old English, we say water.
Yeah. Like it's just one word. We don't separate the syllables.
No. And we don't really enunciate all the syllables when we speak English casually. But when I'm in the classroom, I enunciate.
Yeah.
Pronounce.
So on to the next one. So be flexible. So we kind of touched upon this in a previous one. So be ready to adapt your lesson plans based on what works and what doesn't in the classroom. And the next one is continuously learn. Mm-hmm. So as a teacher, you're going to be continuously learning just like your students. So you're going to have to make sure that you are looking and seeing how your students are doing and adjusting your lessons accordingly. Mm-hmm. And then the last one, which we touched upon already, actually, is the cultural sensitivity. So just like on your end, you're representing yourself, your culture, you also have to be sensitive to their culture as well.
Yes.
Because certain things that may fly in your culture may not fly in their culture, even down to hand movements. You may give them a thumbs up and they think that, oh, this is offensive. So you got to be very mindful about the people that you are teaching and their cultural background. You have to educate yourself as well, just like how they're educating themselves about you and your culture.
Yep. You just have to be open to new experiences and be understanding of some things that might be considered rude to you is not rude to them. And make sure you are also explaining why you react in certain ways. You always want to be understanding of each other, and that's really what's important. with being a teacher. It's just being that you have to be the most understanding person on the planet, honestly.
Well, I think as a person that wants to get into ESL, you're already probably naturally inclined to being more open. And then let's do the last one. So the last one is encourage practice outside the classroom. Yes. So you should definitely be suggesting resources that they can use outside the classroom, like books, movies, apps, and maybe directing them to conversation partners to have practice outside the class. Because sometimes in the class, the things they're learning in the classroom is not enough. So they have to take that outside the classroom as well.
For instance, I one time had my students watch a very short movie clip that we found on YouTube. Like it could be a movie trailer or something like that. And I asked
song them, lyrics. Song lyrics are always good to kind of break down as well.
Or even get them to be creative on their own, like come up with your own song lyrics for a certain song that we could just replace the lyrics with, have them practice the rhyming and all this other stuff while also having fun with it.
Yeah. I've also seen people do storyboards.
Yes.
So,
oh, I love it when they do like a comic strip thing. They have so much fun with those.
I mean, I know as a child I used to love doing that too.
I still like doing it. And I still like doing it. Especially like certain like time words, like before blah 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 blah, after blah blah blah. Those really help with comic strips because it kind of helps them understand it, because in English is such a specific word use that when my students were learning it, they're like, what do you mean like these events could happen at the same time? It's like, oh well, let's look at it on a comic strip, and then it's like bam, wow, connection.
And then it also helps when when they are telling stories to maybe their friends, they know how to structure their stories with the correct words and the correct structure.
All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us today. This is the end of episode 1, 2-part series. We thank you so much for joining us today for Reddit Wind Down, and we look forward to you guys joining us next time. If you are on our YouTube, please do not forget to hit that subscribe button, as well as turn on the notification. If you are following us on Spotify, please do not forget to add us to your library to keep up to date with the episodes as they come out. I'm Ro.
I'm Arnell. And if you want to see more of us, you can follow us on all our social media at Lending Language Lab on all platforms. We'll see you in the next one, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.